there is a passion and there's money, but you always have to look at the passion first. The passion will drive to the money, but if you're looking at the money, you're never gonna have the passion. You know what I mean? But don't like doing the basic stuff. Don't like touching. Don't like getting dirty. Don't like messing with oil and fuel. There's no way you can understand the concept of a motor or let's just say avionics on your side if you're not there touching it and tightening up that screw or using the wrench yourself. You're never gonna understand. You're never gonna be able to put a diagram on how to do something if you've never done it yourself. You know, to an extent. You know, nobody said you gotta come do an overhaul on an engine to have an idea. Of course not. But if you don't know the basics of it, it's gonna be really hard. You know, all you're worried about is wearing gloves because you don't want to get dirty, and is there AC in the facility because you don't want to sweat. Then you're on the wrong field. Our field is different. We are reaching a different market, which is Asia. And we're looking forward to the next generation of engines coming to the shop. So with that said, you know, creating the bigger game plan, creating the bigger capability for the shop, creating the environment for the next generation of employees to come to the shop is something that has me constantly thinking. I do want to cater not only to the older crowd, but I do want the new generation of guys to come to the shop and be able to part of this passion that a lot of us have. I know you guys have it. I have it. So to me, that's the next goal.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Ground Control to Major Nerds. This is season 2 and we are on episode 2. I hope you guys have watched our last episode. If not, please do check out our channel. We have already finished off season 1 with 10 episodes. And my name is Shri, and me along with Parvesh and Ashwini, who is actually missing today. We have Parvesh today. And we have been trying to bring content from the world of aerospace and aerospace engineering and aviation every week. This season, we have made sure that we actually committed to bringing a guest every episode. And for this week, we have Chris, and we will be talking about MROs and Part 145 with Chris. Before that, I would like to introduce my constant co-host, Parvesh. How are you doing, Parvesh?
Hi there. I'm good. Very happy. So
very
yeah,
happy
this,
because
yeah, I just recently got engaged. So
congratulations.
thank you. So yeah, Chris is one of my friends from when I used to work at an MRO. And yeah, Chris started his own MRO right now. And they started off with fuel nozzles, but now I believe they do a lot more. If you're a professional in the MRO space or a student who's looking to start off in this field, this is the episode for you. So I'll let Chris introduce himself. So Chris, go for it. Give us a little background about who you are, what you did, what you studied, and how you ended up in the MRO field.
It's good. Thank you. Before anything, thank you for having your podcast. It's a pleasure to be with you guys. Just a quick recap, right? It started just a little quick dream of trying to do something on my own. I always had a passion for this industry when it comes to airplanes. Devoted myself to engines for the last 30 years. So, you know, going to school, seeing engines take off, airplanes take off, just created this passion that ended up where I am now, which is being the owner of Advanced Turbine Systems, a complete MRO in South Florida, which caters to a lot of leasing companies and airlines when it comes to supporting their power plants, APUs, and now accessories.
Okay. So let's start off with a few questions. So Shri, do you want to start off, or do you want me to start?
Yeah, sure. Actually, yeah, I'll actually start off with some of the few basic questions, actually. So, Chris, like, you know, we all are in the aviation industry. We have actually discussed this over a few episodes, and also to our previous guest, I guess this is what we asked as a basic question. So, how did you get into aviation, and like, you know, what's your first memory, or what was your inspiration to get into aviation or the aerospace field, basically?
My granddad was in the Air Force in Peru. So there was always airplanes. There was always medals around the house, you know, related to airplanes. So that kind of had a startup in my brain and my heart. And when I got to the United States, you know, it was a profession that was followed by my uncles. So it kind of grew into me. And when I was in high school, there was a program to do half high school, half aviation school. And I kind of jumped on it just for the sake of it, not thinking much of it. I ended up liking it. To me, it was taking time off from school and skipping school, and I ended up
Great.
being the best move I made. Yeah, honestly.
So what did you do like when you're in high school and this program, what did it offer you? Like what did it like make you do? Like to be interested to like skip school and do that more?
I was always mechanically inclined, so it,
Hmm.
it took the mechanical inclination into something else, something bigger. They started
Mm.
teaching me how to read manuals, so I always been a bookworm. So it kind of gradually made my mind think and gave me stronger goals. I needed to get better at reading, understanding, get better at math, and little by little, it started developing into a stronger character. And I became a mechanic, grew into inspection, started getting supervisor positions. So it went hand in hand. The passion
Mm.
and the industry opening the door to someone that really wanted to work.
So like being a systems engineer myself, I see the value of manuals and writing manuals and reading and understanding manuals correctly. Uh, I'm pretty sure till like in your current day as well, like manuals and AMMs or CMMs and those kind of things like are like the key things to get operational, you know, uh, readiness checks and everything happen correctly. What would be your one advice to people in engineering when they're writing manuals or like trying to absorb manuals? Like, what's the one thing you feel like I hope like I wish I could teach the young engineers or the young mechanics come up like how do you help them like understand manuals better or like write manuals better in a way?
Sure. This is something that I mentor all my guys. We have four engineers, between process engineers, fabrication engineers, so power plant engineers. I always tell them the same. For you to come up with a process, for you to come up with a design, you need to live the design. If you're not seeing
Hmm.
it from the floor perspective, how's that tool gonna make sense? If you don't see how that tool, that part that you're creating, that sleeve that you're machining, if you're not seeing it live on the floor or how it's going to fit, the fits and clearance of it, you're never going to get it right. You're always going to need to put it, to touch it, to have that feel of the part, to have the feel of the tool. How does it feel in your hand? But if you're just, using CAD and creating a perfect figure on it, how's that going to work? So I think it's more the human factor of it than actually the design that is starting to create a negativity on the new engineers because they'd rather just be in a computer, push buttons. It looks
Hmm.
nice, looks great, but when you throw it on the floor, it doesn't fit, it doesn't work. So, I have my engineers half the time on the floor. Go in there, go touch it, go talk to the mechanics.
Hmm.
Just because being engineer doesn't make you better than anybody. You might have more knowledge of certain things. I totally agree with that. But that doesn't take away from the inspector, the cleaner, the mechanic that is on the floor that is actually touching the parts and turning the wrenches. Once they get that vibe from the floor, hey man, they will get to the next level of engineer.
That's actually perfect because like I actually worked like while working at Gulfstream and trying to design the G5 600 aircraft like internal systems and everything. One of the biggest ways to write good requirements for design was to ask the technicians on the floor and also on the experimental aircraft like what are you seeing there like in terms of the system itself, what is it like lacking over there in terms of like the installations or in terms of like the operability of the actual system. I think having that knowledge helps us write better requirements and also better design modules and like things like that like that just sitting behind a computer, I guess you can never understand those intricate details like how do two parts come together and they you know come like how can we install them together basically, like those kind of things I think come from the shop floor itself.
Yeah, they sure do. They sure do. As a guy that started almost was it 1993, 30 plus years ago, the evolution of the manuals is humongous. We used to be 100 guys with one set of manuals, and they were like the yellow pages, books this fat.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So, in order for you to get instruction, you had to read. And now, kids nowadays, young guys nowadays, they don't like reading. It's just based on memory. So they think they are the baddest mechanics now because they know they memorize how to do two, three tasks. But going back to the basics, reading, understanding figures, understanding schematics. So something as simple as what do you torque it to this is baffling to see the answers, but they don't know the basics. They don't know that a 516 head should be torque only from this to this. They don't understand that. But those general concepts are the ones that have been lost. Having
Okay.
everything computer is great, but with the same, it's taking a toll on the young crowd now. Everything is based on the computer, on the phone. So, getting dirty is not a norm to them anymore. It's like, ugh, getting dirty. Oh my God, why do I got to do that? Because it's part of a process. So the training of the young guys has to be fundamental. If they don't know that a 516 head takes this torque from 70 to, let's just say, 70 to 80 pounds, they're never going to understand the whole concept of why an engine goes together and why there's so many crucial points in a build of installation, to prevent an accident. But it happens. It happens a lot. It happens when we talk to kids that come to apply, and the first thing they ask you is, hey, is there AC? Do you have gloves? What about the passion to the industry? All the motivation to touch and get dirt, get fuel in your hands and get oil. It's kind of dying. It's dying out.
Wow.
Yeah. So okay, let's pivot back to like fundamentals. So can you explain to us what an MRO is, at least to the audience? What an MRO is and what do you guys do at your MRO shop?
Okay. MRO. Oh my God. Now the translation of MRO, managed repair overhaul. Pretty much an MRO in the United States is an FAA approved repair station. Right, we abide by every FAA standards when it comes to FARs and regulations to be able to cater to our clientele, depending on the certification that we have. It could be accessories, could be rating, it could be a power plant rating, an airframe rating, whichever rating you have is based on the regulations given by the FAA, right? So that kind of summarizes what an MRO is and how it works under what criteria it works. Of course, depending
What
on the
about
air cater to, like Europe, you might have to get an EASA certificate, but it all depends on the market that you get.
what does your company have? Like what
Ratings?
regulations or yeah.
Oh, Advanced Turbine System started as a power plant shop, just engines. Started just with one engine model, right? And as we grew into the FAA, the confidence of our PMIs allowed us to get what is called an open capability. Open capability means that any engine that we do a self-assessment for, we could just include it into our capability without having to go through a approval process by the FAA. So let's just say Air India decides to send us work, and we have the tooling, the training, and the technical data for it, the three T's, right? We could just add it to our capabilities if we comply with all those requirements without having to reach out to the FAA.
Okay. So currently, what engines do you guys work on?
We work on the CFM line, CFM 56, 5Bs, 7Bs. We still have a little bit of Dash 3s. We work on the CF6, PW 4000s, Trent, RB 211s, PW 4000s. We do work on APUs, 131.9 alphas, GTCP 85 series, APS APUs, and we just got our accessory rating. So we're gonna be jumping on that venture beginning of next year.
Okay. So moving on from there, we have AI coming up, right? Does it have any impact on your work, your field?
I'm old school. All right. So all this funky little AI stuff is kind of super new to me. So some of the engineers, some of the guys are using the AI for trying to modernize our routers, our work cards. So I'm open to it, of course, right? As an entrepreneur, I gotta be open to what's gonna make the shop move faster and more efficient. I'm not opposed to it. Do I know much of it? I don't, right? But we're open. We're open to seeing what modernization is gonna do to the shop.
Actually, like I would like to take one step, like, back and then ask you this question, like, how did you start like your MRO? Like, how did this idea come about to you, and where did it start? Like, what was the origin story, if I may ask you, of like how did you get to like build this uh company that you built, or where did you start from?
So let me give you a story. All right. Uh, the MRO opened 2020. Most of the guys that I know tell me, you were going to open a shop. You always told us you were going to open a shop. You always had this idea that you were going to open a shop. Honestly, to both of you, I don't recall that. I don't have a time when I said I'm going to open a shop. I don't recall it. As you know, Parvez, my plans back then were different. It was just, work and go have fun and party up. But there was not that mentality, that mindset to open an MRO wasn't clear, So how did I ended up with MRO? Good question. I finally got fed up with having a job from someone. The bureaucracy and a lot of the shops drove me against the wall. And I said, look, I got to go my own. So I started doing consulting. I started teaching all the shops what I knew. I knew I had a lot to offer when it comes to mechanical and inspection criterias. So I started teaching all the shops on how to go about the CFM market, which was popping right at that moment. And once I got a bit deeper into, let's just say, the management, right? Speaking to bigger guys in the companies, I started seeing how much they made and how they were expanding capabilities. And I was like, wait a minute, I can do this. I have access to manuals. I have access to, I was a QA guy myself. So I was like, wait, why don't you just try myself? And I got a little warehouse. I started doing my own manuals for the FAA. And then, as Parvish said, the idea was I'm going to open a shop to test fuel nozzles. I still have that equipment. The idea just grew. And so all my customers from Europe told me, Chris, why don't you just open an engine shop? If you're teaching inspection, you teach mechanics, why don't you just open yourself? And, I spoke to the wife. She called me crazy, of course. And I understand a lot because there's a lot of work. But
Yeah.
little by little, the idea became a reality, and thankfully I have her support, my family's support, and we took it to the next level. And ever since, it's been just taking walls down. We haven't really stopped. We haven't really had time to stop and breathe. It's been just overwhelming in a good sense. Uh,
Hmm.
it's been frustrating times. It's been conflictive, but the reward is right there. Every time myself and my wife go outside to the parking lot and see 60 cars parked outside, like, oh my God, we're doing something.
That's
This is
great.
not yeah, this is not just a fuel nozzle anymore. This is the total package. Yeah.
So basically, like, it was obviously like you had your industry experience and you already had the training to do the work, and you were already like owning the documentation and the manuals that were required to do this work, and then you had the right contacts as well in the industry to, leverage those to start off the MRO. Basically,
Had a couple contacts. I didn't have many.
okay.
Thankfully, ATS has grown through word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad to say South Florida has a bad reputation for MROs.
Mm,
As maybe
mm-hmm.
you guys know. So, is we starting in the wrong place. Starting in South Florida was not the perfect spot, but I started through COVID. So a lot of the big shops couldn't really afford to be open. While Chris, with 1,300 square feet, was surviving.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Mm,
was my way in through COVID. COVID helped us. Through COVID, we
got
expanded.
it.
We did our first expansion, and being that was one of the few open, that's how people started knowing who Chris was as an entrepreneur, not as Chris the inspector, but as an entrepreneur. So that kind of gave us a kind of a fast forward, right, in the industry. And once everybody reopened, our name was already out there. So it was just a matter of keep on doing things correctly. And thankfully that has taken us where we are now. We have humongous customers that people would love to have after 10 years. And after 3 years, we already had the big guys in our shop. We already had airlines in our shop. So I think it was a combination of our drive to better, a combination of what happened in the world, and our desire just to improve and just take walls down. You know.
I guess, yeah, I guess whenever we talk about anybody who starts something new, I guess it's also the environment that helps, but it's more over the drive and the motivation, and also knowing that you have something that, is going to serve the people in the industry. So I guess all of those things click for you. But I would like to also ask you, like, how was your journey to get your own Part 145? You being qualified for your Part
Oh
145,
boy,
and along with your
that was
AS9100D, I'm
another.
assuming.
Right. That was another story. Oh boy. Imagine I was first time applying for a license, a
Mhm.
newbie to the FAA guys, of course. So the first time I had an FAA guy at my small facility, the guy didn't think I was gonna be able to fit a motor in there. He said, "No, there's no way you're gonna fit an engine here." And I was calm, relaxed. I didn't wanna say too much until he got me to the point. I go, look, man, let me get a measuring tape. Allow me to show you what the manual says. Let me measure the door, right? So you can be confident that I know what I'm talking about. So I went and I measured, and the guy said, look, I'm gonna come back with someone more experienced than me on engines. It ended up being that the guy was an avionics guy, not an engine guy. So
Mm.
it started kind of wrong. You know what I mean? So then he took about 45 days for me to get a reply from the guy. And I was freaking out. I was
Wow.
paycheck to paycheck trying to survive. So when the guy came back to me, he wasn't the friendliest, honestly, but you know, but at the end, I did everything he required me to do. His response wasn't the best all the time. He was pushy. I understand. I was a first time in an FAA process with him. So, funny thing, again, COVID kicked in. So he calls me, he goes, Chris, I'm not gonna be able to go to your facility and see it. And I'm like, what are we gonna do? He's like, I don't know. It's COVID. And he just hung up. And that weekend was the worst for me. I didn't know what was gonna happen. Again, paycheck to paycheck, trying to survive, family, little warehouse, buying stuff. So it took another 10 days for him to call me, and he goes to me just like this. He's like, do you have a recording device? And I'm like, I got a phone, right? And he goes, okay, I need you to record your process. And he hung up. So here I am scratching my head. What does it mean, record your process? You know, they usually give you a breakdown of your audit, and then you take it from there. So I started calling people left and right. I didn't know what to do. Back then I had my QA manager, Anwar, which Parvez, Mr. Anwar, he's from Pakistan. So we said, Mr. Anwar, what are we gonna do? He's like, let's just go through the RSM, the QCM, and let's just go page by page. So we have footage of 4 days between videos, pictures, scan files, and that's how we did our audit. There was nobody guiding us. It was just us just putting it together. So we called the guy, we called Mr. James, and we said, look, everything's ready. We have everything. He goes, I need you to put it in a thumb drive and bring it to me. I'm like, can I put it on Google Drive? Can I put it on Dropbox? He's like, no, put it in a thumb drive and bring it to me. All right. Put it all in a thumb drive, took it to the FAA FISDO and wait for a reply. About a month later, he calls me and he goes, Chris, good news. You got your license. So it was stressful. It wasn't fun. I didn't have a guide on how to go about it. It was, I winged it out, and part which you're a witness of that
Yeah.
I am that type of guy. I wing things out. As I grown into being a bigger leader and an entrepreneur, I stopped winging things out. Now I'm more structured on how to do things. Now I forecast a lot more because winging it out will only take you so uh as far as you can, right? But structure of
Yeah,
a
you have
business is
people
critical.
depending on you as well.
Of course. And now that there's so many people depending on my decisions, Chris has evolved from a guy that would just to wing stuff out to a guy that is fully dedicated to support. to support my guys, support the industry, and do the right thing every day.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I think every single part 145 story is something like this, where you are on the verge of like assuming that hey, something wrong has happened and nothing is going forward, and then you get like your success story. So uh yeah, this is great. So just wanted to like hear that out. Like, so how was the feeling once you got your 145? That was a big win, and then did like things get easier after that, or was it still challenging after that?
It was, I mean, it was an exciting weekend for the family, right? For us to know that we accomplished getting our certificate. So we enjoyed a good weekend. We got a couple drinks, partied up, and then Monday was time to go back to work and see what we're gonna do. Thankfully, we had a couple engines already lined up to start working, just waiting on our certificate. So again, COVID kind of helped me in that sense. I had engines lined up to work. I didn't need 20 engines monthly to survive. An engine will ride out 4 or 5 months of our payroll pretty much. It was three cats, literally
Mhm.
four. So, we just got to work. And at the
Mhm.
beginning, I was mechanic, inspector, cleaner, you name it, every position you could imagine just to get the ball rolling. So we started pumping engines. We decided to move to a bigger warehouse. We expanded 5 times within a year. We had 1,300, jumped to another warehouse, a third, fourth, fifth within the same facility. It was like a little village at the end, just little warehouses everywhere. And it was time for us to move to a bigger one. So we found a good rate through COVID, and we ending up with 21,000 square feet, which was our next move. And again, the lack of experience on my side. There's a bunch of stuff that I could have done differently when I rented that warehouse. But as time passes by, I keep learning from the mistakes that I've done. And
So looking at it from a business perspective, right? Where do you think in your general operations you end up spending the most money? Like, is it during procurement or like let's keep aside the payroll, but the other stuff in operations.
hmm, I would say if we take overhead away, right? Let's not talk about overhead. I
Mhm.
would say procurement, outside service, they're huge. The engines that we work with, the CFM and the New York CF6s, a lot of the repairs are only allowed to be performed by GE or CFMI. So you still gotta end up with them when it comes to repairs. So that's a bulk of the money goes there.
There's like stuff out there that says like MRO margins are super thin. Like, is that true, or do you have like a decent margin?
Thankfully, I worked in so many different shops over this last 30 years, right? I always not after all my friends, buddies, acquaintances told me, Chris, you always had an idea to open a shop. Now I started looking at it from the other side, right? I always had an idea on every shop on how to make it better. So that's my game plan at ATS. ATS has to be one of the most populated shop with internal processes. We have about in the CFM 56 line, we do about 70% of internal processes. Not many shops do that. And that's how we get to capture a lot more of that percentage at the end of the equation. So to say we get 25 to 35%, it's good. It's high. Most shops don't do that. We could actually say 25 to 35 because we have KPIs to actually engage on how much we spend, how much time we spend, how much labor was a labor cost, what the expenses that we put into a motor, a piece for a module. So the shop is structured a lot different than bigger shops than ours, just to be able to capture every bit of numbers out on the floor.
So, how do you maintain the quality? Like you mentioned KPIs, right? So, what are some of them that you use? How do you make sure that everything coming out of your shop is perfect?
Okay. As you know, one of my main backgrounds is inspection, right?
QA, yeah.
Um, yeah, QA and QC is what I do the most. So hiring the right guys is critical. Having filters through the processes is critical. I can honestly say we are one of the few shops that have outgoing inspections, not just final inspections. Just because you do a final inspection on this table, that doesn't mean by the time it goes to ship and receiving, it's not damaged. That doesn't mean that the paperwork is not wet by your sweat. It's not dropped on the floor and stepped on. So we have multiple filters to be able to find each one of those problems before it leaves the door. That's just one quick example of how we do about it when it comes to product equipment. We have two PMMs, right? Totally different than the ones that are out there. Expensive equipment, but when you put human factors into measuring, you might get away with it. But are you trying to get away, or are you trying to do the right thing? What is it? Do you want to make the part be within limits, or do you want to give your customer the most accurate dimension possible? So that's what we make a difference, by just doing the right thing, measuring it correctly, giving the reports that are not human factor changed. A lot of shops do that. We're not following it. We rather just say, look, it's not good. Let's come out with a DER repair instead of saying, look, it's scrapped. We avoid scrapping parts. We want to give solutions to our clientele. We want to give solutions to the industry. If we're not flying, none of us will be making money. That's a reality. So ATS has one engineer devoted to DER repairs, and we're doing DER repairs online. Some of our customers on MIA, they call us just for that. Hey man, there's a huge dent. The manual doesn't say anything. What do we do? Call Chris. Call ATS. We get a team. We get an engineer. We get our measuring equipment. We come up with a game plan on how we could make this better. How can we put a solution to it instead of saying, "Oh, you got to drop a motor." It doesn't help. It doesn't help when you have, let's just say, a cargo company, bleeding $275,000 a day for an airplane not flying. It's not the right thing. You got to put in consideration so many factors. Is that area that got damaged really going to jeopardize the integrity of the motor? Yes, no. Will this make it unsafe? Yes, no. But if we're not putting all that into the equation, how can we say that that engine is bad? How are we treating the cargo company? Hey man, drop the engine, spend money. It's not right. Sometimes it's not just about the business, but keeping the airplane flying as safe as they can.
So safety first, then always. That's the
Yes, sir.
motto.
All the time.
Yep.
Yes.
So while we talk since we have now into that topic of safety, so how do you then manage those expectations of the customer? There might be some airline operators or some customers who are no matter what, they want a fast turnaround, or they have maybe committed dates or deadlines, or committed things for the future without understanding what the real problem is. How do you manage those? Because as an MRO, I think that's one of the biggest things. I think that's a challenge. Everything needs to be done yesterday, but you just got the thing today as a problem. So how do you face that challenge? How do you go through that?
To us, pre-planning an induction is critical, right? Reading, getting understanding of records is critical. You need to know the truth before the engine arrives. You need to go to the trend data to see the health of the motor. You need to see the last shop visit to see what went through the shop visit. We need to see the logbook to see if there are any, let's just say, was the engine overheating? Was it going over temp? How many times did it go over temp? But if we don't know none of those variables, there's no way for me to go into an engine and just, find that one part that is bad. So that's how we approach that. Every time we quote a motor, we ask for last shop visit, we ask for the last MPA run, last tester run, we ask for trend data, and we do all this analysis that is time consuming. It's engineering time to go through it. But whenever we get a quote approval, we already have a game plan based on engineering, not just wing it out. Maybe the customer says, "Oh, I want you to change one blade." Okay, sure. Maybe that's what it is. But if we do all the assessment before we come to the conclusion that it's that one blade, it's going to know. The engine will come in already pre-planned with kits, with parts, with manpower, The minute it's inducted, we have a timeline of how long it's going to take due to our research. If we don't do the research beforehand, it's just open an engine into 1,000 gazillion parts and, just wait for it. And that's a norm down here. And we avoid that. We try to cater to being just surgically inclined. Go after that one part that is damaged, if that's the scenario. Another way of doing it is, thankfully, our inspectors are well seasoned in the industry. I would say an average of 15 years minimum. So CFMI is really, really open when it comes to special procedures, right? So we have a huge understanding of the manual. There is special procedures almost for every circumstance in the motor. So being capable of reading, understanding, coming up with a game plan for special procedures always helps the customer. Instead of bringing an engine to 1,000 parts and doing inspection, piece for inspection, every single one of those parts, if you could just do a continuous time inspection, you're helping each other by flipping this motor faster and putting it back on the wing. You know, um, all our shops rather just let it sit, inspect everything, put it on paper, put it in an invoice. But how effective are we being to putting an engine back on the wing? At the end is safety, but then at the end it's also business. If we're not doing our side to procure back to the industry, then how are we all going to survive?
Yeah. So speaking about safety, let's talk about employee safety, right? Like, how do you make sure that all the mechanics, everyone in the shop floor is safe?
Okay. Training is big. Training is one of the most critical areas in the shop. From indoctrination training to basic safety training, chemical training, training on job training, trying to cover every circumstance. We have a dedicated QA team on the floor, doing surveillance on the engine, on the documents, on every department to make sure that we have everything we need and that the guys are covered when it comes to training. That's as far as we can go.
So in regards to training, have you considered like upgrading to like AR training? Because I've seen videos online, like people using VR, AR headsets to do training and stuff. Have you considered that as an option maybe for the future? Or are you already using it?
No, we're not using it yet.
Okay.
The FAA is not too keen on it yet. It's still too fresh, right? So there's still like we have all our manuals are on paper. All our training has to be signed, correct? So we haven't even gone to electronic signatures yet. So in order for us to get to the next stage, when is let's just call it a non-human giving you training, this still is still not clear on FAA. FAA wouldn't even know how to put it on paper. So it's still too green, I guess. Nevertheless, I seen, I think it was Southwest Airlines, which they were starting to do that training, but they run into the same. How are they going to put it on paper?
I guess it's also like dependent upon like what like design assurance level systems that you're working on. Like for example, engines are like A plus or A. I don't think so FA is gonna budge or even like accept that kind of wiggle room to make anything like more augmented or like more like automated in any way.
Yeah.
Uh, but for example, the systems that I live in, which are C and below, I think there's a lot of the electronic signature aspects and the automated training aspects, the actual video aspects, like the video training aspects have come through, and FA has accepted that in I think a lower level, like a safety
Okay.
hazardous level, system. So I guess
Okay.
yeah, I think for a B and above, I guess FA is still pretty skeptical about trying to budge in that sense.
So
But
you
at
see
the
where I'm coming from.
yeah, of course I do.
Awesome.
But
Great.
I do have to ask you though, like it is like for a business to be run, like obviously any kind of like sustainable activities like automation or anything that can make your workplace more efficient would help, right? Like I mean, it would
Of
make
course.
your job
Oh, definitely.
like better. Like I think the quality of the work also gets better if you have like repetitive work not getting like repeated every single time by a human, but except by from like some kind of an automation in standpoint if it doesn't impact the installation itself.
Mhm.
Do you use that, or do you think like there are like scope in MROs to implement those things, or at your place are you already using them?
We're not using it. Our I know the key factor is, right. Please don't take this the wrong way, but
Hmm.
most of FAA guys are late 60s, close to 70s. So for
Hmm.
you to draw an idea like that one, it's just not going to go. They're going to be like, nope. You know what I mean? It's hard. This is more new generation type training, new generation concepts that, don't take me wrong, when it comes to making it more efficient on training, yes, it works. I've seen it. I've seen the training myself, and it's great. It's something that will definitely assist the new generation learn faster. Why? Because that's what they do on a daily
Hmm.
basis.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So a lot easier for them to put that mask on and just watch it, and yeah, cool, okay, that makes sense. Instead
Hmm.
of going out there and turning it, So I agree. I agree to an extent that will make things a lot more efficient for a new generation. But there's a conflict. Old FAA guys, new generation employees. It has to come to middle ground in order for it to work. So right now it's not happening yet. It's not budging yet.
No, I don't blame them as well, the older generation FA regulators and DERs and stuff, because they are used to knowing what safety is from their standpoint, and they're not going to compromise on that. And I guess the newer generation, or the newer tools that are coming in with automation tools and everything, I guess they if they can't understand it, they won't approve it. So I do get that. I was just trying to see from that viewpoint, like, is that still a case, or is there some headway that has been made in those sense? If not, then yep, that's where we stand.
I would say,
But the yeah,
right,
go ahead.
the way, if it was structured from the manufacturer to us, will be a lot different. If,
Mm,
let's just say, CFMI has a training on one of those platforms, right, approved by them, it's a lot easier for the FAA to absorb and say, you know what,
got it.
we should be targeting that because the manufacturer of the motor that you're working on has that training approved. Then it'll be a lot easier case. But if the training performed by CFMI, the one that we send our guys to, is a hands-on training, they're not gonna go by it.
Interesting.
So there's another little conflict right there. Yeah.
So I guess it's also up to the manufacturers to maybe do something while they're providing the products out there in the industry, to come up with some kind of like instruction manuals or trainings, or any kind of like efficiency that they can build into their product while it is in maintenance or repair, basically. So that's the next step
I think that'll
in.
be huge.
Second.
Yeah, I think that'll be huge
Yeah.
if
Okay.
the manufacturer themselves will look, we have this platform to do training. Like, who does it? Boeing does it. They have all
Hmm.
the simulators.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Something like that. Something where the manufacturer says, look, we quote unquote allow you to do this training. I will certify you under CFMI standards if you do it. Cool. The FAA will be like, oh, really? Great. Okay. If the manufacturer's allowing you to do it and certifying you, then okay, it should be fine. But there's not that merge right now. We are two separate from each other when it comes to it. So the technology is there, but there's not a connection from the
Mm,
FAA or the MRO to it quite yet. Is it going
got
to
it.
get there? I'm sure. I'm sure there's other people thinking of this already. So it's just a matter of time.
So, do you think it's actually a factor where older generation FAA, DERs, and approvers still being in the industry? What happens when they leave the industry? Is there a backup? Like, is there an ecosystem where there is like younger generation DERs coming up and getting trained under them? Because that's one of the biggest challenges I find in my industry. Where I'm from the avionics side. I usually deal with the avionics development and the avionics certifications and stuff. Um, One of the biggest challenges is like finding a software DER or a hardware DER for like DO-254s or the 160s and stuff like that. Like getting a DER like for DAL A or DAL B, it's becoming a challenge. Unless you know somebody in the industry, you will not find like readily available people. So is that the same thing in your field as well, where you have certain set of DERs and that's it, and then you don't see a new generation of DERs coming up?
Yeah, I mean, the FA is constantly hiring, but they're so strict on hiring that you only get someone, I would say, 50s and up that will get hired for a PMI position or maintenance position. So it's still green when it comes to it. They're so strict in hiring, and how can I say it? The younger generation, they're not reaching those requirements either.
Mm,
They just jump into a job and they jump 2 jobs, 3 jobs, 4 jobs, just looking after a dollar, 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 dollar. So they don't even have that strength on a resume to be able to apply for an FA. They don't have it. You know what I mean? You got 5 jobs in 5 years. What does that look to you? How can you even possibly try to apply for an FA position when you've been just jumping around over dollars? It's not, every FA guy that I know has a 20, 30 year with management positions, and new generations don't like management.
mm.
They just go for a job, and they don't want overtime, and they don't want to work more than so many hours. It's different. It's a bit different. It's challenging.
No, I can see that, because I think from the time I joined aviation back in 2014, 2015 timeframe, like my mentors kept on like pushing me for like, learning rather than looking at the dollar value or looking at the, what could be next, but just focusing on the trade that you have in front of you to learn that, right? When it comes to safety critical jobs, I guess having a stable experience in one field is pretty critical. And I guess
Yep.
that is something which is kind of like a challenge, I guess, in the industry right now.
Yeah, HR hiring is totally a challenge. It's a challenge nowadays. It's hard to find good resumes. Not to say individuals, but to find a good resume is challenging. We gone, let's just say, no lie, this year, I would say over 120 resumes,
Mm.
and to find what, 6 positions, because it's not there anymore. Those hefty background personnel, it's hard to find. It's hard to find.
We should get Josie on once for the same
You
podcast.
should.
She can help us
Yeah.
through that.
You should.
I guess, yeah,
Definitely. Definitely. You should
definitely.
reach out to her. She'll be happy to join you guys.
That's
That
great.
is a struggle. She's struggling when it comes to it. We're hiring from outside the country. We're trying to take advantage of visas from other countries to just try to fill our lines, because locally this is not many qualified. There is, but they're not qualified for the type of work that we do, or the level of quality that we want at the shop.
That's very interesting. So I did not know the problem would be at that extent where you're trying to see somebody from outside of the US for something like a specific like a specialty job like this. Like that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when you're trying to keep a high quality product, you can't afford you cannot afford mistakes.
Hmm.
That's first and foremost. So when you have a guy that is in the United States with 5 years experience trying to get paid more than a 10, 15-year experienced guy, there's a problem. There's a huge problem. And the big shops locally, they have damaged that identity. They just rather hire and not get quality. So we're outsourcing. Last year we got 5 employees from Mexico. Minimum 15-year experience from Safran, from a manufacturer, and help them out. And they're here on their contract, and it's helping us. So we're going again to hire another 5, 6 next year. We have them lined up because they have our own mission, which is work and give you quality. And that's what we're looking for.
So moving towards, we briefly spoke about new technologies, right? So things like 3D printing and uh, 3D scanning for inspection, things like that. I know that we implemented it when I was there itself. So have you also implemented it in your
Oh
current
yeah,
company?
yeah. We do a lot of 3D scanning for manufacturing. We have the two CMMs. We have microscopes, 3D. We have our CNCs, of course, and which one's the other one you said? Um,
3D
we use it
printing.
for tooling. The 3D printing, we do use it for tooling. For
Okay.
all safety equipment, we use it like for caps on the LPTs. We do tooling for that as well on the 3D printers. So yeah, we're using that. We're using that a lot. Those are one of the few new generation things that I do like because they are useful. It's something that you could do and reach productivity at higher pace. So yeah, we do a lot of that.
And like, what about things that you want to do that we have as green initiatives, right? Like, what are you doing to for sustainability, for going green, things like that? Because I know there's a few new regulations that are there for to implement greener processes, things like that. So, have you done any yet? Do you have plans for it?
Yeah,
Things like that.
I mean, we abide by regulations of FAA and abide by regulations by the manufacturer, but within that, we also look for alternates when it comes to, let's just say, chemicals. There's greener chemicals that we can use, so we try to go that route. The manufacturer gives you options. So if one of the options is a greener version of the chemical, then we go that route. We also do um, the LEAP engine. There is a serviceability thing that enhances the green part of, right, with the fuel nozzle. So we do conversions on the bigger engines to just to help out. It's not so much the business side of it, but how can we help the environment as well when it comes to it? So we're taking a strong approach when it comes to that.
Great. Parvesh, any more technical questions that you may have? You
I'm good.
think? All right, great. So
I'm good. I'm
I
good.
I guess like this one I would like to like ask you some kind of like general questions, and this would be like something where your experience and what you could actually like advise. So one of the questions is like, what do you think like today's youngsters, I mean you have answered in piece by piece in like some of the questions, like you have brought this up, but um for today's youngsters who are passionate about maintenance, who are passionate about the AMC side of things, like what is your one advice? How do you like try to like give them like that one advice that you may have when you were younger to like go ahead and like have a great career in the AMC field? Like what do you think would be a great steps to take from beginning till like being like mid career basically?
Okay, so we have a lot of um, young guys at the shop, right? And the mentoring always comes from the bottom of my heart, right? There is a passion and there's money, but you always have to look at the passion first. The passion will drive to the money, but if you're looking at the money, you're never gonna have the passion. You know what I mean? So I tell that to the guys consistently so they can understand that it's not just looking at the number sign. If you're looking at the number sign, you're never gonna love airplanes. You're never gonna love what you do. But if you have the passion to work, to have a good character, to help people, to help this industry, the number's gonna come right with it. So, staying away from just the money side of the business will help them understand and create a better identity for themselves. Staying human, like what we spoke about. All these young people that don't like doing the basic stuff, don't like touching, don't like getting dirty, don't like messing with oil and fuel. There's no way you can understand the concept of a motor or let's just say avionics on your side if you're not there touching it and tightening up that screw or using the wrench yourself. You're never going to understand. You're never going to be able to put a diagram on how to do something if you've never done it yourself, to an extent. Nobody said you got to come do an overhaul on an engine to have an idea. Of course not. But if you don't know the basics of it, it's going to be really hard. If all you're worried about is wearing gloves because you don't want to get dirty, and is there AC in the facility because you don't want to sweat, then you're on the wrong field. Our field is different. Our field is something that you got to go touch, feel, smell oil, and live it. If you don't live the passion, then the numbers never gonna get there. Or if you get there, you won't have a passion. So why are you in business for?
Yeah, like my mentor used to say, if you're claustrophobic, you're in the wrong business for aircraft design. You need to get out of here. So it's the same thing. We need to get under under the floor, the aircraft floor, go towards the eBay. It would be hard. It would be messy. You still look at the connections. You still look at look at the interconnects and everything, while understanding what the diagram that you saw on the computer is, and then re-visualize it over there, just to troubleshoot, block by block, where exactly the issue could be. And if you
Of course.
cannot withstand the heat and the tiny areas to go in there, and then you're not willing to do that work, then yeah, you will never understand, or you'll never be successful in this field. So I do understand what
Yeah.
you mean by that. So
All
yeah.
those are variables. All
Yeah.
those are variables that would affect the
Yeah.
wiring. What if it's a drop of, I don't know, what if there's a drop of fuel falling on the wire, but you never see it? If you never look and there's a fuel line on top, you never get to figure that out. You're still
Yeah.
going to think that it might be a wire, it might be a connector, it might be the plug that is bad, but look up, look, there's a drop falling on it. I mean, right? But
Yep.
again, that's something that I truly wish new kids will develop, that sense of seeing around, looking up, look to the side, look up. There's more than just a screen. The screen will give you a lot of information. Don't take me wrong, but there's a bit more.
I guess to summarize your answer, it is don't follow the dollar value, follow your passion. And the second one is get your hands dirty. Otherwise, you're in the wrong
Yes, get out
business.
there. Get out there, get dirty.
Great. All right. One last thing for you from my side, at least, and then so what's the next thing that you're looking forward to in your business, in your MRO world, or in this maintenance, repair, and overhaul world of the engines, for example? Like, what's the next big thing that you're looking forward to, you're excited about, like, hey, this is going to come in and this may be exciting and this might revolutionize the business?
So we're expanding. Expanding again. We are reaching a different market, right, which is Asia. We're looking forward to the next generation of engines coming to the shop. So with that said, creating the bigger game plan, creating the bigger capability for the shop, creating the environment for the next generation of employees to come to the shop is something that has me constantly thinking. I do want to cater not only to the older crowd, but I do want the new generation of guys to come to the shop and be able to part of this passion that a lot of us have. I know you guys have it. I have it. So to me, that's the next goal, to be able to bring more young guys and to have that feel of this industry, not just the dollar sign, because it will come, but that passion. Bring that passion back to the industry.
Got it. It's great.
Cool. So to close off, I want to go completely outside of aerospace. I know that when I was there, I tried to get you into gaming and anime. It didn't work.
Into what,
But
sorry?
since I left, into gaming and anime.
Oh,
Since I left, has there been any progress in that field?
none whatsoever.
Thank you for that answer, Chris, because he's been trying that on every single guest. I think it's going to keep going on. That's going to be one of
Yeah.
our questions, I guess, to every single guest. But thank you for saying
Yes,
no.
it will.
That's
Yeah,
amazing. I'm really happy that you said no. That's great.
I'm
That
here,
tells
Cyberpunk.
me you have no time for anything other than your business and
None.
your work. So that's great. That's
Wow.
amazing.
Sorry, Barbers.
I'll get Chris Jr.
Yeah, good luck.
All right, guys. I think we had a great session. I'm hoping I'm not like I haven't bored Chris at all. And I think we had a great conversation. I think we learned a lot. Me and Parvesh, at least, like we learned a lot through this conversation about how the MRO world is and how things are with you, Chris. And we got some very insightful thought processes of like how the youngsters should be looking into things, and also the next generation of like MRO, what it's going to be looking like. So I would like to wrap it up and say like thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Chris.
Thank you, guys.
It was
Yeah, thank
great. Any words from you at the end that you would like to speak?
Yes, I'm not gaming, Parvez. Sorry. That's one. I want to thank you guys. I want to thank you guys for this opportunity. Our website is up for you guys to reach out if you guys have any questions. If there's anybody that would like to know more about what we do, feel free to email, text us through you guys. You guys are doing great by doing this to help everyone in our industry to learn more and get to know what we truly do, which is keep the engines flying and keep the airplanes in the air. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. So, in the end, like, if anybody wants to reach out to Chris or wants to work with Advanced Turbine Systems, they can check out the website and Chris's LinkedIn page. If you guys want to have a deep dive, contents about aerospace and, aviation news and all the events that are happening, please do subscribe to our channel. If you think this episode was fun, please do like, share, subscribe, and reach out to us.
If you put in your resume that you're a watcher of Ground Control to Major Nerds, Chris will consider your resume higher than everyone else's.
That's insane.
Thank you.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you, guys. Thank you for watching.
Thanks.
See
Take
you on
care.
the next one.